Well, that was a race, I guess. Kia ora, I'm Kimmy. I talk F1 in the world's second worst accent. Editing Kimmy here. Apparently we just got voted the sexiest accent in the world. What were you people thinking? These are my 3 conclusions from the 2025 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and let's crack straight into the big criticism. Yeah, it was a pretty boring race overall. However, the TV direction didn't really do it any favours. I have never been so grateful in my life to have a small house. My couch is about 2.5 meters away from a 65-inch television, which means watching a large chunk through the picture-in-picture on the timing chart is just about possible. And yeah, I get it. The broadcast directors want to focus on the main storyline, which is, of course, the title fight. However, considering the moment the tyre blankets came off and Oscar Piastri's white striped hards were revealed to the world, effectively locked in the most boring finale we could all hope for, barring some kind of midfield-initiated safety car or red flag, it was a pretty big miss to focus on the 3 guys driving around with, let's be honest, at times, an entire pit stop between them. And even when there were some moves being shown further back in the mini-screen, I did find myself often bemoaning the fact that it would close out far too quickly. Basically, this race might go down in history as one of the most anticlimactic ends to one of the best Formula One seasons ever. Not only because the fight at the front was neutered due to McLaren's smart tyre strategy and George Russell's lack of pace, but also because when there was action happening further down the field, we just didn't see it. And like last year, where the excitement came from a Constructors' Championship battle and Charles Leclerc charging through the pack, the same was going on this year, just not for the top spot. Aston Martin, Racing Bull, Sauber and Haas all had opportunities to gain big chunks of cash. And even if it's not the most glamorous thing in the world, there were still points of pride at play in the Drivers' Championship, with a whole lot of the grid being tight on points with multiple other drivers. In the end, 3 peers actually ended up level on points, with Hulkenberg and Hadjar tied on 51, Lawson and Ocon on 38, and Stroll and Tsunoda on 33. In complete honesty, the coverage on Sunday kind of felt like the broadcast centre gave most of the team the night off to enjoy the finale and left a skeleton crew of interns there to push some buttons every now and then, with the instructions to focus mostly on Norris, Verstappen and Piastri. It wasn't great, it could have been at least a little bit better, and I think that's definitely something to learn from. The post-race was solid though, I'll give them that one. My second conclusion is that no matter how it played out in the end, there is no denying that any of these 3 guys were deserving of the title. Wait, no, that's not correct, is it? There's plenty of denying all over social media. Good lord, some of the nasty stuff I've seen coming from Oscar and Max fans has lost me more than a few brain cells. But in my opinion, all 3 of these guys deserve to win, and even though I personally was rooting for Max, it was still very, very cool to see Lando Norris take it in the end. The way I look at it is this. We had Oscar, who led the championship for the majority of the year, had a period of struggle later on, just like his teammate did earlier in the season, but managed to stay barely within touching distance right to the very end. Then there's Max, who through his own brilliance, his team's turnaround and McLaren's mistakes, managed to almost pull off the greatest comeback in F1 history, and in the end only missed out by 2 points. And then finally, Lando Norris, a guy who's given his entire F1 career to one single team, stuck with them through the miserable times and kept the faith even when he had plenty of opportunity to dip out and join someone else that looked like they had more of a chance, steadily clawing back the points after the summer break until it was all but an inevitability that was only put at risk by his own team's misjudgments. Saying any of these guys didn't deserve the title is just madness in my opinion. Yes, I believe that Max was the better driver of the 3 this year, and barring the moment of red mist in Barcelona, it's hard to fault his performance. But Formula One is not an individual sport. It's always been equally about the team and the car as much as it is the driver. Or even, honestly, more about the team and the car than it is the driver. And even though I don't agree with a lot of how McLaren goes about things, you can't deny their design and engineering team did the best job this season. And honestly, seeing a dude who has been constantly attacked by the media for his perceived lack of championship mentality, called weak and too soft, and a whole lot of other things that go against the machismo that is often held aloft as the only way to succeed in the sport. To go out there and win in the end, I think overall is a very positive thing for Formula One. Well done to all of them, and thank you for an absolutely thrilling championship battle that was both a joy and an immense frustration at times to watch. The best kind of Formula One season, in my personal opinion. And finally, I think this is it. Crunch time for Ferrari. If they don't pull off a decent season next year and deliver a car that is able to regularly be in the mix for wins, they might be looking for 2 new drivers for 2027. It's become increasingly apparent that Lewis Hamilton is not going to do a Fernando Alonso and keep going until his body decides he can't do it anymore. And if he continues to look like Daniel Ricciardo to Charles Leclerc's Lando Norris, Ferrari will kind of have no choice but to look elsewhere for 2027, even if Lewis does want to continue. And I don't think anyone out there believes Lewis Hamilton would be that level of masochistic. Hopefully, surely, right? Charles Leclerc certainly sounds like he's ready to think about jumping ship if his comments about next year being now or never for Ferrari are anything to go by. And if all of this chatter about Mercedes developing the clear winner in the power unit stakes are worth the screens they've talked about on, then with a resurgent Williams and a McLaren that's coming off the back of 2 Constructors' Championships in a row that were made possible by their superior car development, and a Mercedes with 2 very quick drivers, one of whom is probably the most consistent guy on the grid right now, Ferrari should be worried. And yep, that's all hypothetical, but with Ferrari's recent history of hiring world champions and breaking their spirit, you kind of can't help but wonder if another miserable year for a 7-time world champion and a guy who probably should have been a champion by now might be the last nail in the coffin of the Scuderia's romantic appeal. And if it is, who would join them? Ollie Beerman? Probably, but who else? Carlos Sainz isn't going to go back there if the superlative way he talks about Williams is anything to go by. Lando Norris? I very much doubt it. Max? I think he's headed Mercedes' way if he decides to leave Red Bull. Oscar Piastri? Depends on how next year shakes out, but I think he's more likely to be having a little look at Red Bull or Aston Martin. George, maybe, but again, I think he's more likely to be looking in the same direction as Oscar. Alex, also maybe, but then I think he'll take one look at what Charles Leclerc has gone through over these last few years, look at his own very functional team, and think twice. So you're left with Nico Hülkenberg, Esteban Ocon, and Pierre Gasly as the 3 more experienced guys on the grid who might be tempted for a move, or taking a punt and trying their luck with Yuki Tsunoda. Hülkenberg's probably seen as too old, particularly following Lewis's struggles this year. Ocon, I doubt they'd get away with taking both of their customer team's drivers. Yuki's too much of an unknown quantity and doubtful that Ferrari would hire someone who's been dropped by Red Bull, so that realistically leaves Gasly. Gasly and Beerman. Now that's an interesting prospect. And that's not to say that unexpected pairings haven't worked well for Ferrari in the past. I mean, look at Leclerc and Sainz. Sainz wasn't expected to be quick, to sit back and just be a Barrichello, but he actually turned out to be pretty darn good and valuable in other areas as well. And in my opinion, they're still one of the best driver pairings we've ever seen in Formula One. And that duo came off the back of a miserable year for Ferrari as well, the worst in recent memory. However, Sainz was hired before the 2020 season even began during COVID lockdowns when Ferrari had finished second the previous year. Words are just words, for sure, but the level of despondency this season that's come from the Ferrari drivers is just really not good. And I hope for Ferrari's sake they figure something out and come out of the gate with a car that's at least a good platform to build on this time, rather than whatever the SF25 was. So that's it. Season over, and that was my final Grand Prix conclusions for the year. What did you take out of Abu Dhabi 25? Chat about it down in the comments. Don't forget to give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Thanks as always to my patrons for your support. You're so much appreciated. And if you would like to become a patron, then the link is down in the description, as well as here on screen. I'll be working on a super license points tracker over the break, as well as getting next year's championship calculation spreadsheet ready to go for when things kick off in March. I'll catch you all on Thursday, probably for a little chat about the helmet marker news if that officially breaks between now and then. Ka kite.